Welcome back to the Pro Football Pod. It's Coach and Austin joining you for a quick video. Today we're going to be covering our starters and shitters at all four major fantasy positions, giving you guys some valuable insight on how everyone did this past week. So, Austin, did you get any wins this past week on your fantasy teams?
Not too many. Not too many. It was a rough week for fantasy.
It was. We're going to cover that right now. The way that this is going to work is really simple. We're going to cover people that might not have been necessarily considered starters that put up starter type numbers, and then people that were supposed to be starter that put up shitter type numbers, and then give you guys some insight on what you should be doing in the future. So we'll start it off here with the quarterbacks. Starter right away, Gardner Minshew. Gardner Minshew was the quarterback number 3 on the day in 4-point touchdown leagues. Pretty impressive. We talked about it on the Sunday episode. You talked me out of not starting him over Kenny Pickett, so thank you for that one. I got the W, so don't worry.
It wasn't too bad of a switch.
It,
Kenny still came through.
and we talked ourselves out of it because he was playing against Cleveland. That's kind of what I want to talk about. His next matchups are against New Orleans, then he gets Carolina, and then he gets New England, and then a bye, then Tampa. Against New Orleans, like it's kind of the same situation as Cleveland. I would say don't start him based off of what he did last week. Do you think that you would just give him a start or only really play him into the good matchups like Carolina?
If you need quarterback, then yeah, I feel solid in starting him. He showed he has rushing ability. 2 touchdowns with the legs. You love to see that from your quarterback you're trying to stream.
Now
So
he had a crazy game, right? He had
yes,
55 attempts, 33 completions for 329 yards and a touchdown. He had 2 rushing attempts for 4 yards. So he really it was
and won the game.
yes, absolutely. Now I think that he's not going to get to play against the Browns and like that type of team. It was crazy the way that that game actually played out. So I'm
Yeah,
I'm afraid a little bit to just jump on his bandwagon, especially because against Tennessee, he only had 14 attempts, 11 completions for 155 yards. And just putting those 2 weeks up, it just seems like it's too up and down.
and who does he play this week?
This week is going to be New Orleans. So I think that like no
That's
against New
another
Orleans.
solid defense.
Again, yeah, I think that we might see him come back down to earth. Josh Downs, who we're going to talk about later, I have a different opinion on, but I don't know if I'm willing to just jump full in on him right now like that. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Another starter would be Derek Carr. Derek Carr finished barely in the top 10, but he put up 18 points for you. He looked like a serviceable guy playing against Jacksonville, who was supposed to have a good defense. I think that he doesn't have the easiest schedule. He's got Indianapolis, and then he gets Chicago, Minnesota, and then the rest of the year gets pretty rough with like Atlanta, Detroit, the Rams, Tampa Bay, Atlanta again. So I think that he's someone I would like more, honestly, than Gardner Minshew. Just like as someone that's serviceable, that's a little bit more of the median. He'll put up decent points. He'll put up, nothing too bad for you, though. Now, we do have some shitters, some people that were supposed to do good that didn't. I think Goff is probably the only one that we absolutely have to talk about. The expectation of him playing on the road. We said that he wasn't necessarily going to be a guy to start this week or the guy because he's playing in Baltimore, but nobody expected what we saw. Do you think that he came down to earth a little bit?
yeah, 100%. I mean, it's not to say that he can't go out there and put up big numbers, but it's just like the type of quarterback that he is. He's just above average, is what I would say he is. He's better than Kirk Cousins.
Now he put up 10 points. There's only 2 games this season that he didn't put up nearly 20 points besides that one, and that was at Green Bay and at Kansas City. He has Las Vegas next week in Las Vegas. Or, I'm sorry, in Detroit, and then he goes bye week at Los Angeles, in Chicago, I'm sorry, at Los Angeles, and then in Minnesota for Chicago, in Detroit for Green Bay. I think that we take him for all of his home games: Las Vegas, Chicago, Green Bay, Denver, Minnesota for the rest of the season. I think you start him for all those, and you literally find someone else whenever he's away.
Yeah, I like that.
All
Not an
right,
issue.
good call. Wide receiver starters. We've got Josh Downs. This guy was electric, and we were terrified to start him because of the matchup. He was the second best receiver in fantasy over the weekend so far.
I feel like he's been a must start ever since Minshew's been in the game. This man just targets him, and he's showing the type of ability that Josh Downs has.
Only 6 targets last week, but that doesn't matter whenever he gets 13 points on the
It's
first
like
target.
Dak.
And at one play, 13 points, that's something that you don't get very often. You have to take that guy whenever he's getting those looks, and he's going to keep getting those looks.
I think it's someone that raises an eyebrow for Josh McDaniels, Mike McDaniels.
Now, another person that was probably not in a lot of starting lineups, but ended up putting starter numbers was Cortland Sutton. He finally had a really solid week with 16.6. He's been right around 10 to 15 fantasy points almost every week so far this year, except for whenever he played the Jets. He's got Kansas City, Buffalo, Minnesota, and Cleveland for his next 3 matchups. Do you think that for anybody besides Minnesota, who's an automatic start against the defense, that you're going to start him against Kansas City, Buffalo, or Cleveland?
That's tough. Buffalo's. I would definitely start him against Buffalo. Buffalo looks god awful.
In their secondary?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm a little bit afraid of him. I actually was able to trade him away before this week even happened, and I'm sure that the guy that traded for him is going to feel real good about it after seeing 17 points for him. Like
He
that's
got the
coming into his
touchdown,
team. But
but
that's
he
the
would
thing,
have
dude.
been just an average guy on the day if he hadn't got that.
He only had 6 targets for 6 catches, 76 yards. Without that touchdown, he is a nobody, and that's what he's going to be for the rest of the week if he doesn't get touchdowns. He's barely a flex play. I think that you try to move him right now off of last week before you do anything else.
'Cause even with like how bad the Packers were playing in that game, like the Broncos still weren't putting points up on the board. They were still struggling. Like even though they won the game, they still struggled throughout the game. There's
Exactly.
some excitement with the receiving core, like getting receptions and doing things with them, but that's
And
still not a team I
there's
want to
four
buy in on.
receivers there, and I don't know which of them is the actual guy. Cortland Sutton seems like the best one to have, but it seems that way, and we don't know what's going to happen week 10 whenever Marvin Mims figures out the offense or Brandon Jones, Joseph, I think,
Judy started out having the best day.
and then ended up doing not much. Now we did have a couple wide receiver shitters that I definitely want to talk about. Waddle, dear and near to my heart as a player. I absolutely love him. As a fantasy manager, he is so inconsistent, and the injury that he had again last night, it
I
just
mean, he came back in at least, so you like to see that toughness,
and he
that
barely put
grit.
up 10 for us though, and I just I'm a little bit afraid of what he's going to if he's going to keep being injury prone. It's the last 2 years that it's been like this. It's not like it's just this season. He has these little mini injuries and he has to miss a couple quarters or too many series, and it puts him in this I'm either really good or really bad, and I don't like that. I would need consistency. So I might be willing to take the inherent value everyone else thinks about him and move him for something. Moving him for a running back 2 on that could trend upward into a running back 1 might be worth it. That's how I feel about Waddle right now.
Feel that. I think like someone that's is risky, but like Jordan Addison, he's at least been having a solid year. Like I
Even
mean,
more,
he hasn't had that like boom factor that Waddle does have whenever he is
trading
fully healthy.
for a Rashi Rice and something else, or trading for a Zay Flowers and a little bit more, a little bit of a sweetener for Waddle, I think is gonna you're gonna get tons of value from that because Zay
You
Flowers was
drafted him in the
probably
third round, so
or
it's
second.
yeah.
So Waddle was a second rounder in a lot of leagues. Okay, so another shitter that's kind of on the same boat, second or third round wide receiver behind a number one that's one of these top 10 guys. AJ Brown just got 125 yards receiving for like the last 4 games in a row, and that's never happened in NFL history. And his running mate Devonta Smith is looking just like he's not able to get it done enough for us to where we can just confidently start him. Though cornerbacks for the Dolphins are completely depleted, and he was still barely able to put up a fantasy serviceable matchup. I don't really want to trust in him too much in the future. I think that he, a lot like a Waddle, has a lot of inherent value that everyone thinks he has that he might not have, and they'd be willing to pay a little bit for him. So he's another one that I might try to wait for one more good week. If next week he can have a really solid week, then we move him right after.
I like that.
So we've got a couple guys that did really awesome this week at running back position that we really didn't expect much of. First one, Deonta Foreman. He was the number one running back in week 7. He had 16 attempts for 89 yards, 2 touchdowns, 3 receptions on 5 targets for 31 and a touchdown. So 3 total touchdowns. Now, he was the only running back on the team, basically, the last 2 weeks. And he didn't really do that great against Minnesota. And then this week against Las Vegas, he did amazing. We expect Roschon Johnson to be back next week against the Chargers. Would you still start him, or do you think that Roschon's going to be able to have the step above him being a younger player? Deonta Foreman's 27 years old.
Yeah, I think Roschon's going to take a lot away from Deontay. Especially, who's going to be quarterbacking? Is it Fields or
It's
the
probably
other
going to
guy?
be Badgett again. I haven't heard
Badgett.
too much about the Fields injury, but I expect it to be multi-week. And with how good Badgett did just running the offense, I think that they let Fields get fully healthy instead of trying to bring him back super early.
Yeah, I think Foreman's just fool's gold.
So if you
He
can
had a
get
great week, but
anything for him in a trade, right now is the time. Anything at
yeah,
all. It doesn't even matter what you get because it's going to be worth more than what he's going to finish the season with. And Kurt Herbert's coming back eventually too. I don't really want too much a part of that backfield. Roschon's probably the only one I would take. Another guy on a similar thing to talk about is Gus Edwards. Gus Edwards ended up having a bit of a game. He was the 5th best running back for the week, 21 points. He had a touchdown, and then he had a target that he took 80 yards. And without that 80-yard target or without that touchdown, he really didn't do anything. He had 14 targets for attempts for 64 yards. So I'm not in love with this guy in the future. I don't think that him or Justice Hill are really going to have much value. Lamar's just passing the ball too well. If you don't have Lamar Jackson or Mark Andrews or Zay Flowers on that offense, then you don't have a piece of that offense.
I mean he's something definitely to turn your head at. Like he's someone you can stream week to week.
His next matchup
The
is at
Lions match,
Arizona.
the Lions D look like Swiss cheese though. Like I don't know what
Yeah,
was up with that.
that's crazy because they haven't looked like that all season. It was in Baltimore and they just were on the field all day, so I think that has a lot to do with it. But Gus Edwards is 28. I think that this was probably his best game, similar to Deonta Foreman. I think that you try to trade him immediately and often. Send one trade option to everyone in your
That's
league
a good one to try to trade away.
and see if you can get something for him, especially if you could get like a Kareem Hunt. That would be amazing. Send him and another lesser piece for a Kareem Hunt, something I would do all day long. Now we did have a couple of shitters. DeAndre Swift didn't do much against the Dolphins
He
defense.
looked good though. Whenever he got the ball like in his hands, he did look good with it. So
There
like
were
there's
a couple of
potential there.
runs. He just got stuffed so many times that his
It's a prime
averages were
time
horrible.
game, and the Dolphins' run D is decent. So
I
like
think that
y'all were coming with that pressure. You know what to expect from the Eagles. Like you know they run first. So like you're automatically on your toes running downhill at that team.
him and Raheem Mostert are kind of on the same clip that they were the number 1 and number 2 running games, and they looked horrible against those two defenses. It seemed like they'd heard everyone talking shit, and decided that they weren't going to take it anymore and that this was the game that they were going to show up because they both did. And I think that both guys are absolute starters. I think that we don't take this as this is what we're going to see from DeAndre Swift for the rest of the season. He probably isn't going to do that.
I mean, he's been having a solid season. He's shown he should be the starting running back in that backfield.
Except for week one.
Start Kenneth Gainwell. Well, that's a Gainwell was the starter there.
That's the other thing.
And he's proven that he should be the lead back there. He's explosive.
Against Minnesota. So he's put up 25, 14, 15, 13, 13. He's looked so good.
That's a solid trade target right there.
And we keep going for DeAndre Swift every week. Like we're against Washington, Dallas, against Kansas City, against Buffalo. We're going to expect that this team is going to use him to win those football games. That's just what they look like right now.
Yeah. I mean, you can only use Jalen Hurts so much. Like, they don't want to run him into the fucking dirt.
Agreed. And they do want to run him into the dirt. They run the whole team into the dirt on those 1.5 yard. I feel
so bad for Jason Kelce.
Dude, so bad. He's got the Chris Collinsworth was talking about how he. Oh no, it was Al Michaels saying he has 3,000 pounds on his back. That he's basically got a car on his back as he's just crawling along.
That's all I could think about.
Oh, I love the guy. All right, so tight end starters. Darren Waller is someone that you expect to start against bad teams, and
he's someone you've been trying to turn away from if you could.
Exactly.
The offense he's on and the quarterback issue, but
versus Washington, I wasn't super excited about it.
So if you could trade him for something, that's another good trade.
Absolutely. He put up 12 points against Miami. He only put up 7 versus Buffalo, and then he put up 20 this week. That's 2 solid weeks out of the last 3. I think that if for a team that's really tight end needy, or they have everything but tight ends and they're trying to get rid of a couple of assets, I think that you try to fleece them. Try to get something for Darren Waller. I don't know what you're going to get because I don't know who's going to be stupid enough to buy into the Giants offense being awesome, especially without Daniel Jones, with Tyrod Taylor. But they play the Jets this week, so if you're going to move them right now. Don't wait.
The thing with trading is if you're sending a trade, you're automatically trying to rape someone.
Not necessarily.
Not necessarily, but like
you just need them to see value in it too.
Trying to get the upper hand. Like there's nobody that sends a trade that's not trying to get an upper hand.
It's about positional. If you're trying to trade a receiver for a receiver, then yeah, I'm trying to get the better receiver.
Sometimes it works out where you trade the perfect trade to someone who is in need of these receivers and they have too many running backs and you're able to get a running back for them because they're in need of these receivers. Like there is those situations, but there's only like a few teams in the league that you can actually do that with. So
very true. Now another starter for tight ends that we didn't really expect was Taysom Hill. Taysom Hill has not had a good season. He put up less than a point, 8 points, 2 points, 2 points, 2 points, 8 points, 14. So nobody was starting Taysom Hill. He sat on everybody's bench or on the waiver wire, and he's playing Indy and Chicago. I'm terrified of picking this guy up, but I think that if I absolutely
deal with the headache.
If I needed a tight end, if I have Freiermuth on IR and I started Michael Mayer last week and I've got no prospects, Taysom Hill is totally worth picking up for the flyer that whenever they start running these, because the offense for Indianapolis is now going to start to change up, hopefully. Kamara cannot get targeted 15 times a game and then win. So if they're starting to target the tight end more with Taysom and utilize him in that way, I mean, there you go. That's something. He's helped people in the past be able to win leagues because he was utilized properly. So I think that he's worth a deep, deep, deep flyer. Now, someone that was kind of a shitter for us this past week was Sam Laporta. Laporta has been on a tear. He has to come down to earth eventually.
Yeah, the whole team came down to earth. The whole line.
He still got 7 targets for 52 yards on 6 catches.
That's great to see.
For a tight end? That's wide receiver numbers.
Well, it was also tight end day, so you know he should have had 14. But
that's so true. Now, another one that we really we expect more from. He did get 7 targets, 5 receptions for 45 yards, but Evan Ingram for Jacksonville, I know that it was versus New Orleans and it was a hard fought W. They ended up winning the game, but Calvin Ridley and Evan Ingram looked absolutely horrible, and we needed to see more from both positions. I think that Evan Ingram, that just can't. He can't put up
Ingram,
only 7, man. We need 10
I
from him.
know, but he did have the nastiest snag out of all the tight ends. Did you see the
No,
one
we
he did?
didn't. No, we didn't. You didn't see the one from Pitts where he caught it behind his back, just like Bijan did, and like brought it in. He did the same thing. He was like, "Oh, Bijan, don't worry, I got you, man." Like
Bro,
he
he
did
got
the same
magnets
trick.
in the gloves. Come on.
Well, they don't turn Pitts on for the most part because he's not catching everything.
I don't
Well,
know.
do you have anything else to add on the starters and shitters?
No, that was good.
Well, this is another episode brought to you by Tulsi Rose Tea at TulsiRoseTea.com. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. That right there is Austin's pretty pink cup. He likes it, not because of the color, but because it makes him feel manly.
It's from Tulsi Rose.
It is from Tulsi Rose Tea, so get your tea needs at TulsiRoseTea.com. We're going to have another episode come out tomorrow for our waiver wire and a couple more later in the week, so keep your ears to the ground, and we'll see you then. Peace.